My name is Jordan Rivera. I'm 34 years old, and this is the night I walked out of a rooftop family reunion in New York City and stopped being my family's personal ATM, babysitter, therapist, and emotional punching bag. I didn't slam a glass or flip a table. I did something scarier. I quietly put my fork down, looked my 10-year-old daughter in the eyes, and said, "Finish your food, baby. We're leaving. For good." There I was, on a glass-walled rooftop in Midtown, string lights overhead, skyline so pretty it almost looked fake. My mother was at the center of the long table, telling a story about how she sacrificed everything for her children. My younger brother Marcus was leaning back in his chair, drunk off the open bar I'd paid for, bragging about his second failed business that I'd also helped pay for. And my daughter, Leah, was sitting at the far end of the table, squeezed between two chairs like an afterthought, listening to my family laugh about how I still haven't managed to keep a man. The moment that changed everything was one single sentence from my mother. She raised her wine glass and said, loud enough for the entire table to hear, "To my real family, the ones who stayed, the ones who gave me grandkids the right way." Her eyes slid past Leah like she was invisible. The word real sliced right through me. Leah glanced at me just for a second. It was the way kids look at you when they're trying to figure out if they should feel hurt or if they're overreacting. I saw the question in her eyes. Am I not real family? That was my breaking point. Not the money, not the loans, not the years of being used. It was that look on my daughter's face. If you've ever been the responsible one, the strong one, the one everyone calls but no one really sees, this story is for you. Because that night, on that rooftop, something inside me quietly stood up and said, "No more." I grew up in San Antonio, Texas, in a small beige house that never quite looked finished. The kind of place with a yard full of half-broken lawn chairs and a "we'll fix that next weekend" list that never ended. My father left when I was 6. My mother, Lorraine, liked to remind us of that. "Your daddy walked out and left me with 2 kids and nothing but bills," she'd say, tugging her cigarette out of the corner of her mouth. "So don't you ever forget what I did for you." Us was me and my brother Marcus. He was 2 years younger, and from the minute he was born, the rules were different. I was the helper. He was the baby. At 8, I knew how to make spaghetti, fold laundry, and get myself to school when Mom was working the early shift at the diner. At 10, I was packing Marcus's lunch and making sure he did his homework. At 12, I was translating credit card bills and collection notices for my mom because they stressed her out. "Jordan, read this for me. You're so good with numbers." She said it like a compliment. It took me years to realize it was a job. When I turned 16, I got my first part-time job at a grocery store after school. I thought I'd finally have my own money. I imagined buying myself new sneakers without feeling guilty, maybe saving up for a car. My first paycheck was $142.37. I'd never seen that much money with my name on it. I set it on the kitchen table, just to look at it for a second. My mom sat down across from me, cigarette in hand, her eyes already red from crying earlier. "You know we're 3 months behind on the electric, right?" she said. "They're gonna shut it off. You like doing homework in the dark?" I didn't argue. I endorsed the back of the check, handed it over, and watched her leave to go cash it at the corner store. "Family helps family," she called as she closed the door. "Remember that." I did remember. I remembered it when Marcus got arrested at 19 for fighting outside a club, and Mom cried on the phone until I transferred $600 for bail. I remembered it when Mom's car broke down and she needed $1,200 for repairs so she could keep working, and asked me to, "Just put it on that credit card you got. They gave it to you for a reason." I remembered it every single time a crisis came up, and somehow the solution was always my wallet. I was good at numbers, like she said, so I learned engineering. I got a full scholarship to a university in Austin. I took the Greyhound bus there alone the first week of freshman year. Mom refused to help me move. "I can't just abandon your brother," she said, like I was asking her to choose between us. "He needs me here." Translation: you figure it out. You always do. So I did. While other kids were skipping class and partying, I was working 2 campus jobs and sending money home every month. When I graduated and landed a job in New York City as a project engineer for a construction firm, my mother cried proud tears on Facebook and wrote a long post about my brilliant daughter who made it all the way from nothing. She never mentioned the monthly transfers that paid her rent when she blew her own money at the casino. She never mentioned the nights I worked until 2 a.m., fell asleep on my laptop, and woke up with keyboard marks on my face. I told myself it was temporary, that once they caught up, things would calm down. They didn't. New York chewed me up and spit me back out that first year, but I learned fast. I went from a junior engineer to project manager in 4 years. By then, I was 28, working 60-hour weeks, and finally making enough to breathe a little. That's when my family stopped treating my help like a miracle and started treating it like a monthly subscription. The calls always started the same way. Mom: "Hey, baby girl, you busy?" Me, already bracing myself: "A little. What's going on?" There was always a story. Someone was sick. Someone got laid off. Someone's car broke down. Someone's rent shot up. "At least you don't have kids yet," my mother liked to remind me. "You got freedom. We got responsibilities." I didn't mention that I was paying for those responsibilities. When I was 29, Marcus decided he wanted to be an entrepreneur. "Jordan, it's a food truck," he said excitedly over FaceTime. "Tacos with a twist. I got the recipes, I got the hustle. I just need a little help with the startup costs." A little turned out to be $15,000. "Think of it as an investment," my mother chimed in. "You're so good with money, you'll make it back in no time." Spoiler: I did not make it back. The food truck lasted 8 months, then disappeared, just like the money. The debts kept growing. I started a spreadsheet to keep track of who owed what, half as a joke and half because the numbers were getting scary. Mom's car repair, $1,200. Marcus's bail, $600. Marcus's food truck, $15,000. Tom's rent during hard months, $800 here, $900 there, $1,100 when the landlord raised it. Mom's medical emergency that turned out to be veneers, $4,500. Marcus's networking trips that looked a lot like vacations on Instagram, another few thousand. I didn't add up the total. I couldn't. It made me feel sick. And then, right when I thought I might catch my breath, life threw me a curveball. I got pregnant. The father, Evan, was a guy from work I'd been seeing for about a year. He was charming in the way men are when they like the idea of a family more than the work of having one. When I told him, he went quiet. Then he said, "I'm not ready to be a dad." and backed out of my life like someone slowly closing a door and pretending they can't hear you calling their name. I thought my mother would be my safe place. I was wrong. "You really gonna be a single mom?" she asked over the phone. "You know how hard that is?" "I grew up watching you do it," I said. She snorted. "Yeah, and look how that turned out. You're stressed all the time." "Maybe I'll do it differently," I replied. She sighed dramatically. "Well, I guess we gotta help you now." Oh Lord, more responsibilities. We. The same we that always somehow meant me. When Leah was born, everything changed and nothing changed at the same time. I loved her so fiercely it scared me. Suddenly, every decision wasn't just about me. It was about her future, her safety, her heart. I went back to work earlier than I wanted because bills don't care if you're tired. I paid rent, daycare, and New York prices. I was exhausted, but I was doing it. And still, the calls came. "Baby, Marcus's transmission just died. They said it's gonna be at least $2,000. "Jordan, the landlord's talking about eviction if I don't pay by Friday." "Jordan, your uncle's in the hospital. We're trying to put something together for him." One night, after transferring $600 I didn't really have to help my mom just this once, I stared at my bank app and saw my saving account dip below $1,000 for the first time in years. I looked over at Leah sleeping in her crib, one hand curled around her stuffed bunny, and I realized something ugly. If my mom called and said, "I need $500, I would send it, no questions asked. If I needed $500, there was no one I could call. The family reunion in New York was my mother's idea. "Well, really it was your idea," she told me on the phone, voice bright. "You sent that picture of you and Leah at that nice restaurant with the city lights behind you, remember? And I thought, wow, Jordan really made it. She's in the Big Apple. So why don't we all come there this year? Something special, something fancy." My stomach dropped because I already knew what was coming next. "Of course, we can't afford New York prices," she continued. "Flights are crazy. Hotels? Forget it. But you're doing so well now. And you know I always dreamed of seeing the Statue of Liberty." She trailed off, letting the guilt fill the silence. "How many people are we talking?" I asked quietly. "Oh, not many," she said. "Just, the immediate family." The final guest list was 27 people. I booked group flights with my credit card because my mother didn't have one. I reserved a block of hotel rooms at a mid-range place in Queens. I negotiated a prix-fixe menu with a rooftop restaurant in Midtown that my clients loved. "Don't worry," I told myself. "You'll pay it off. You always do." When the night finally came, I tried to convince myself it would be worth it. That maybe, for once, they would see how much effort I put in. That my mother would stand up, raise a glass, and say, "Jordan made all of this possible. Thank you." I dressed Leah in a navy blue dress with tiny stars on it, pulled her curls into a bun, and told her, "You look like a princess." She twirled in the mirror and giggled. We arrived early to the rooftop, the skyline glowing around us. By the time everyone else showed up, I was already mentally calculating how much overtime I'd need to make a dent in my credit card bill. I could feel work emails buzzing in my bag, but I ignored them. Tonight is about family, I told myself. Except, it wasn't about family. It was about my mother. and the story she had built about herself as a martyr who had given everything for her ungrateful children. I watched her hold court at the center of the table. People fawned over her, complimented her dress, told her she didn't look a day over 50. She gestured grandly, accepted every compliment like tribute. I sat near the end of the long table, between Leah and my cousin Jasmine. Halfway through the main course, the conversation shifted to children. Marcus, who had brought his on-again, off-again girlfriend, leaned forward and said loudly, "Yeah, but at least I gave Mom real grandkids, with an actual family." The table laughed. I felt my cheeks heat up. Leah, who had been eating quietly, froze with her fork halfway to her mouth. Mom chuckled, then sighed dramatically. "Well, you know how it is," she said. "Some kids make good choices. Some kids don't. I just thank God for the ones who did it right." Her eyes flicked to me, just long enough for me to know exactly who she meant. My heart pounded in my chest, but I stayed quiet. Then came the toast. Mom stood up, clinking her spoon against her wine glass. "I just want to say something," she began. "Being a single mom was the hardest thing I ever did. I gave up everything for my kids. I worked double shifts, triple shifts. I went without so they could have what they needed. And now look at them. One built a business, one lives in New York. I must have done something right." She paused for applause. People obliged. "And now I have my reward," she continued, smiling at Marcus's 2 toddlers. "These beautiful grandbabies, the ones who carry on the family name, the ones who were raised right. To my real family, the ones who stayed, the ones who gave me grandkids the right way." She lifted her glass. My throat went dry. Across the table, Leah's back straightened. She looked up slowly, eyes wide, like maybe she'd misheard. Jasmine shifted in her chair, uncomfortable. My chest burned. "Mom," I said quietly, "Leah is right here." She waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, you know what I mean. I'm talking about proper families. Husband and wife, house, stability. None of this." She made a vague gesture at me. "Modern chaos." Someone snorted. A few people looked down at their plates. Leah's lower lip trembled. I reached for her hand under the table and found it cold. That's when Marcus decided to pile on. He leaned back, smirking. "I mean, Jordan's got that good New York money," he said. "She doesn't need a man. She's got us. Right, sis? We're your family. We're the ones who show up. We always have." It landed like a threat more than a comfort. Something in my chest snapped. Not loud, not dramatic, more like a thin wire finally pulled too tight. In that moment, memories flashed through my mind in quick, painful flashes. 16-year-old me handing over my first paycheck for the electric. 22-year-old me Western Unioning bail money at 2 a.m. 27-year-old me wiring thousands for a food truck that never got insured. 30-year-old me paying my own medical bills from childbirth and my mother's dental work in the same month. 32-year-old me rocking Leah through a fever while answering work emails, because if I didn't, I might lose the job that kept all of us afloat. And then, Leah, my girl, sitting there at the end of the table like a guest in her own story. Something inside me stood up before my body did. I didn't throw my napkin at anyone. I didn't scream or cry. I just took a breath so deep it felt like it reached all the way down into my childhood, grabbed that little girl who kept trying to earn love, and pulled her back up with me. "Leah," I said softly. She turned to me, eyes glossy. "We're leaving," I told her. "Grab your sweater." She blinked. Did I do something wrong?" My heart cracked. "No, baby," I said, my voice steady even though my hands were shaking. "You didn't do a single thing wrong. That's why we're leaving." I stood up. Chairs scraped, heads turned. "Jordan, sit down," my mother hissed. "You're making a scene." I looked at her, really looked at her. For the first time in my life, I saw a woman who believed her own story so deeply that she couldn't see the bodies she'd climbed over to tell it. "No, Mom," I said quietly. "I've been making sure you could have a scene for years. Tonight, I'm just stepping off your stage." Marcus scoffed. "Here we go," he muttered. "Drama queen." I ignored him. I bent down, helped Leah into her sweater, and took her hand. "Jordan," my mother said sharply, her tone dropping the sweet facade. "Don't be childish. We're in the middle of dinner." "I paid for the dinner," I reminded her, my voice still calm. "And I'm done paying to be disrespected in front of my child." Someone at the table gasped. Jasmine whispered, "Good for you," under her breath. My mother's eyes narrowed. "You think you're better than us now, just because you live in New York?" she snapped. "Don't forget where you came from." "I never did," I said. "That's the problem. You raised me to believe family comes first, but you meant your comfort, not our well-being." "Jordan," she started. "I'm not arguing with you in front of my daughter," I cut in. "I'm just telling you what's happening. We're leaving, and after this, things are going to change." "What's that supposed to mean?" Marcus demanded. "It means," I said, looking from him to my mother, "that starting tonight, I'm done being everyone's emergency fund and emotional punching bag. I'm done paying bills that aren't mine. I'm done letting my daughter feel like a visitor at a table her mother built." My mother scoffed. "You owe me," she said, her voice low. "I sacrificed my life for you." That sentence had controlled me for most of my life. Tonight, it felt hollow. "You chose to be a mother," I replied. "You didn't do me a favor by feeding me and putting a roof over my head. That's what parents are supposed to do. That's not a debt I have to spend my life repaying." Her faces twisted. "Ungrateful," she hissed. "You've always been ungrateful." I looked down at Leah. "Watch me carefully," I told her softly, "because this is the last time anyone talks to me like that and still gets my help." Then I squeezed her hand, turned away from the table, and walked toward the elevators. No one followed. No one apologized. No one said, "Wait, let's talk." The only sound behind me was the quiet clink of silverware and a low ripple of awkward conversation, as if people were already trying to pretend nothing had happened. The elevator doors closed with a soft hiss. Leah stared at the floor for a long second before whispering, "Mom?" "Yeah, baby." "Are you mad at Grandma?" I swallowed hard. I'm done letting Grandma decide how we feel about ourselves," I said. "That's what I am." Leah's brow furrowed. "Did she hurt your feelings?" "She's been hurting my feelings since before you were born," I admitted. "I just didn't realize I was allowed to walk away." Leah thought about that for a moment. Then she did something small and huge at the same time. She slipped her tiny hand into mine and said, "I'm glad we left." "Me too, baby," I thought. "Me too." But leaving the rooftop was only the first step. The real decision happened back in our hotel room, with my laptop open and my bank app staring back at me like a mirror. That was the night I decided. If they saw me as a walking credit card, it was time to cancel the card. Back in our small hotel room in Queens, Leah fell asleep fast, exhaustion and emotions finally catching up with her. I tucked her into the bed closest to the window, pulled the thin comforter up to her chin, and watched her chest rise and fall. My phone was lighting up on the bedside table. Mom, you embarrassed me. Marcus, real mature, sis. Mom, after everything I did for you. Marcus, you gonna at least send the rest of the payment to the restaurant? That one made me laugh. Of course. They weren't worried about me. They were worried the bill might bounce. I put my phone face down, opened my laptop, and took a deep breath. I'd never actually totaled everything I'd given them. It was time. I opened the spreadsheet I'd started years ago as a joke, back when I thought keeping track would make me feel more in control. Rows and rows of entries stared back at me. 2014. Electric bill. $142.37. 2015. Car repair. $1,200. 2016. Marcus bail. $600. 2017. Rent help. $850. 2018. Mom dental. $4,500. 2019. Food truck investment. $15,000. 2020. Medical bills. $2,200. 2021. Marcus networking trip. $1,300. 2022. Mom behind on rent again. $900. 2023. Marcus loan. Promise to pay back by Christmas. $3,000. And on, and on, and on. My fingers hovered over the trackpad. For years, I'd avoided that bottom cell. It felt like the moment of truth I wasn't ready for. Tonight, I was ready. I scrolled to the bottom and typed a simple formula. Equal sum B2 B96. The number that appeared made my stomach flip. $73,482. $73,482. Almost 3 years of daycare. A down payment on a house in a cheaper city. A cushion that could have let me breathe instead of panic every time I checked my bank account. My chest tightened, but for once, I didn't turn away from the feeling. I let myself feel all of it, the anger, the grief, the embarrassment. Then I closed my eyes and took another deep breath. This ends tonight, I whispered to myself. For me and for her. The plan wasn't complicated. It was just something I'd never allowed myself to consider before. Stop giving them money. Cut off the auto payments. Block the numbers when they became abusive. Stop showing up to every crisis. Start showing up for myself and my daughter. I opened my banking app. The first thing I did was cancel the recurring monthly transfer I'd set up to cover part of my mother's rent. I'd justified it for years as keeping her off the street, but I'd never truly asked myself why I was more afraid of my mother's discomfort than of my own burnout. The app asked me to confirm. Cancel this recurring payment? My thumb hesitated over the screen for half a second, then pressed yes. Next, I opened my email and went through every message with transfer or payment in the subject line. The $200 I sent to Marcus every month. until the business turns around. The extra $150 I sent Mom whenever she said her car made a funny noise. The vague, "I'll pay you back next week" Venmos that never came. I made a list of every temporary payment that had become permanent. Then I went one by one, canceling, pausing, or simply deciding, I'm not replying to this request. I opened a new spreadsheet tab. At the top, I wrote, "Money I'm keeping for me and Leah." The first line item, the amount I'd been wiring to my mother every month. I moved that number from the outgoing column to the savings column. It felt wrong at first, selfish even. My mother's voice rattled around in my head. Family helps family. You wouldn't have any of this without me. You owe me. But then I looked over at Leah sleeping in the bed, cheeks still puffy from holding back tears at the restaurant. Another voice spoke up. She owes you a soft place to land, not more trauma. I decided on one more step. I opened a new account at my bank, a savings account in Leah's name. Every dollar I had been sending home would go into that account instead. Emergency fund, college fund, flight out of town if we need to fund. Whatever she needed one day. I set up a recurring transfer, the same amount, same day of the month. Only this time, it wasn't quietly leaving my account and disappearing into someone else's crisis. It was quietly building a future for my kid. The irony wasn't lost on me. For years, I'd been told, you do for family because family did for you. I was finally doing that, just for a different generation. When I finished, it was almost 1 a.m. I sat back on the stiff hotel chair and stared at the ceiling. I half expected lightning to strike, or my phone to blow up with some cosmic punishment for daring to cut my mother off. Instead, nothing happened. The world kept spinning. My daughter kept sleeping. My bank account sat there, quietly, still mine. That was the night I realized. Saying no didn't make me a bad daughter. It made me a good mother. The thing about finally setting boundaries is, people who are benefiting from your lack of them will often act like you've attacked them. My mother was no exception. The group chat blew up the next morning while Leah and I were at a diner in Queens, splitting a stack of pancakes. Mom, I hope you feel good about yourself. Mom, we had to cover part of the bill because the restaurant said your card was maxed. Mom, you've changed, Jordan. New York changed you. Marcus, you really left us hanging. That's messed up. I felt my face flush. Panic rushed up my spine. I grabbed the check and checked my credit card balance right there at the table. I had more than enough available. The restaurant must have run the wrong card or made a mistake. For a second, the old me wanted to fix it immediately. Call the restaurant, apologize, over-explain. Instead, I took a breath. It doesn't matter, I told myself. You know you can handle your part. You don't have to manage their feelings too. I texted back one message. I've paid more than my part for years. I'm done discussing this. Then I muted the group chat for 1 year. We flew back to New York that afternoon. The silence felt strange at first. I kept reaching for my phone out of habit, expecting a new emergency to pop up. Nothing did. On the third day, Mom called from a new number, since I'd blocked her original one after she left a long, profanity-filled voicemail. Jordan, she started immediately, no hello. So what? You're just gonna leave us in the lurch? My rent is due and I was counting on that transfer. I closed my eyes, counted to 3, then said, Mom, I told you things were changing. I have my own household to take care of. You think we don't have a household? She snapped. You think we're not struggling? I know you're struggling, I said calmly. You've been struggling my whole life. Me sending money hasn't changed that. It's only changed my ability to build something better for my daughter. There was a long pause. So that's it? She said finally. You're abandoning your family? I looked over at Leah, who was coloring at the kitchen table, humming to herself. I'm not abandoning my family, I said quietly. I'm choosing which direction family goes from here. She scoffed. One day you're going to need us, she said. Don't come crying to me when your fancy New York friends disappear. I hope you're right, I replied. I hope I never have to call you in a crisis the way you've called me, for both our sakes. Then I did something I never thought I'd do. I ended the call. I didn't apologize. I didn't explain. I just hung up. A week later, Marcus called. I let it go to voicemail. Look, sis, he said. I know Mom's been extra, but you can't just stop helping. They're talking eviction. You know she can't afford that place without you. Don't punish everyone because your feelings got hurt. I listened to it twice. The second time, I noticed something. Not once did he say, I'll pick up more shifts. Not once did he say, I've been paying toward the rent too. Not once did he say, I see how much you've done and I'm sorry. It was all about what I should do. So I deleted the message. There were consequences, of course. 2 months later, I saw on Facebook, through a cousin I hadn't unfollowed yet, that my mother had moved into a smaller apartment across town. The caption said, New chapter, downsizing, but still blessed. I stared at the photo for a long time. The old me would have sent money out of guilt. The new me thought, she's an adult. She made adjustments, just like I've been doing my whole life. Marcus's situation unfolded more slowly. He texted me asking for $500 just to hold him over until his next paycheck. I replied, I'm not lending money anymore. I hope you figure it out. He didn't respond. 3 weeks later, another cousin messaged me that Marcus had taken on a second job at a warehouse. He's miserable, she wrote. Says the hours are killing him. I typed and deleted 3 different responses before settling on, I've been working 2 jobs worth of hours for years. He'll survive. It felt harsh and honest at the same time. Not all consequences were external, though. The biggest change was inside my own apartment. I stopped flinching when my phone buzzed. I stopped opening my banking app with a knot in my stomach. For the first time since I moved to New York, I started to see my savings go up instead of down. One Saturday morning, about 4 months after the reunion, I took Leah to the park. She was on the swings, hair flying, barefoot because she hated shoes. She jumped off mid-swing, landed in the grass, and ran over to me. Mom, she said, breathing hard, are we still going to visit Grandma this summer? I hesitated. I don't think so, baby, I said slowly. Grandma and we need some space. She said some hurtful things and hasn't apologized. Leah nodded, thinking. Are you mad? I asked carefully. She shrugged. I like Grandma's chihuahuas, she admitted, but I didn't like how she talked about us in New York. My heart clenched. I didn't like it either, I said. Leah looked up at me. I'm glad you took my hand, she said. When we left, I felt safe. That was my reward, not karma, not seeing my mother downsize or my brother work nights. My reward was my daughter looking at me and seeing someone who chose her, over and over and over. 10 months after that rooftop reunion in New York, my life didn't look like a movie makeover. I didn't suddenly become rich. I didn't buy a mansion or quit my job to start a wellness brand. What happened was quieter, and in some ways, more miraculous. I switched to a different company that valued my work and offered flexibility. I negotiated a salary that reflected my experience, something I would have been too scared to do before. I moved Leah and myself into a slightly bigger apartment in Queens. Not a penthouse, not some Instagram fantasy, just a place where she finally had her own room and a little corner by the window for her art supplies. We started having Friday night dinners at our small dining table, candles from Target, mismatched plates from Goodwill. No one made speeches about who was real family. No one kept score. We ate spaghetti and laughed about Leah's school drama and my crazy coworkers, and when we raised our glasses, it was with iced tea and chocolate milk, and the toast was simple. To us. My contact list got shorter. My life got calmer. I limited communication with my mother to short, polite text messages on holidays or birthdays. When she tried to guilt trip me, I answered with boundaries instead of excuses. I can't talk about money, I texted once. If this call is about that, I'm hanging up. She called less after that. I still send her a small gift card on Mother's Day. Not out of obligation, but because my therapist reminded me I can be kind without sacrificing myself. Marcus and I barely talk. He posts cryptic status updates about fake people and family who turns their back on you. Sometimes extended family tries to pull me into the drama. Your mom is getting older, my aunt told me over the phone. She's set in her ways. You know how she is. You just got to accept it. I do accept it, I replied. That's why I don't let her close enough to hurt me anymore. People acted like my boundaries were sharp knives, but to me, they felt like seatbelts. They kept me and Leah safe. A few weeks ago, something happened that made me realize just how far we'd come. Leah and I were at a friend's house for a barbecue. There were a lot of kids, not enough chairs for everyone at the big table. One of the adults laughed and said, "I guess the kids' table is over there," pointing at a wobbly card table in the corner. Some of the kids groaned. A couple of parents joked, "Hey, we've all been there." I watched Leah's face carefully. She glanced at the card table, then at me. "Mom?" she whispered. "Yeah?" "Can I sit with you?" I smiled. "Of course." We scooted over, made room on the bench, and she squeezed in beside me. 5 minutes later, one of my friends noticed. "Aw, Jordan," she said. "You want her to be with the grown-ups that bad?" I thought about my mother's toast in New York, about the word real, about the girl sitting next to me, who I had once let feel like a guest in spaces I had paid for. "No," I said, putting my arm around Leah's shoulders. "I just want her at any table where she feels wanted." My friend nodded. "That's fair." Here's what I wish someone had told me years ago. You do not owe lifelong payment for the bare minimum your parents gave you. Feeding you, clothing you, keeping the lights on, that's not a favor. That's their job. If they choose to weaponize that, to guilt trip you, to turn every sacrifice into a debt you must spend your entire adult life repaying, that debt is invalid. You are allowed to close accounts that only ever withdraw and never deposit. You are allowed to say no to paying for other people's bad decisions, especially when those decisions cost your peace, your future, or your child's self-worth. You are allowed to outgrow the role of family savior. You are allowed to become your own savior instead. If you're reading this and feeling that familiar knot in your stomach because you recognize yourself in my story, the late night transfers, the sick feeling when your phone lights up with a family member's name, the way your heart breaks when your child starts to believe they are less because of your family's words, this is your sign. You are not crazy. You are not selfish. You are not ungrateful. You are tired. You are being used. And you are allowed to stop. You don't have to walk out of a rooftop restaurant in New York to start changing things. You can start smaller. Say, I can't help with that, even if they get mad. Let the call go to voicemail when you're too drained to talk. Cancel one transfer and watch the world not end. Put that money into your own emergency fund or your child's savings account. Talk to a therapist, a friend, someone who sees you. Most of all, watch your children. They are learning from you how love should feel. One day, they will either repeat your patterns or break them. I decided mine would watch me break them. Now, when Leah tells people about her family, she doesn't talk about who didn't show up for us. She talks about Friday night dinners, about the time we danced in the kitchen with sauce on our shirts, about how Mom always makes sure I get the first plate. The little girl who once sat at the end of a long table, wondering if she was real family, now knows this. She is the center of someone's world. And that someone is me. That's the life I chose when I walked away from the rooftop that night. Not a perfect life, not a drama-free life, but a life where my daughter and I sit at a table we built ourselves, a table where everyone eats, a table where love is not something you have to pay for with your soul.